answering observation questions based on feature films. See if you can beat their scores.
At 5 o'clock, think of a number. This week, Johnny Ball angles for your attention.
Normally, you think of angles as two lines coming together to form an angle, and it's rigid, and it doesn't move. This programme is about angles that move, that do things, all kinds of different angles.
And you can see how man has forced angles to help him in Think of a Number at 5. Programmes tomorrow afternoon on BBC One.
Now on BBC One, we've a futuristic vehicle to take us up to the 6 o'clock news as we board the spaceship Enterprise for Star Trek.
Space, the final frontier.
Tearing down the buildings so they can't return. The blacks have found new homes by the government. The bishop has joined other church leaders in condemning this policy, which means blacks have to live on what are called homelands, often many miles away. Sometimes black anger has turned to violence, as it did recently in one township, but the bishop has never supported violence. He's the leader of the South African Council of Churches, and he believes in changing South Africa in a peaceful way and that all people stand equal before God. Tonight, his many supporters are celebrating the bishop's award. Dr. Barnardo's, one of Britain's biggest children's charities, has announced a new royal president. The Princess of Wales is to take over the position from Princess Margaret. But Princess Margaret will still be a patron of the charity, along with the Queen and the Queen Mother. Dr. Barnardo began working with poor children in London in 1866. Now the organisation cares for over 9,000 children every year, many of them handicapped. Princess Diana is well known for her interest in children and young people, and Dr. Barnardo say they hope she'll be involved with them and their work for many years. Princess Margaret has been president of Dr. Barnardo since 1948, but her interest in the charity goes back 40 years to when she was only 15 years old. She's met many of the children who've benefited from the charity's work during her presidency. Last year, she met 12 youngsters who've been given Champion Children Awards for bravery and for overcoming their disabilities. Britain's youngest heart and lung transplant patient left Harefield Hospital in London today to fly back home to Sweden. It's just 6 weeks since she had the operation. 14-year-old Cecilia Brandenfeld came to Britain specially for the operation, and doctors at Harefield say that they're delighted with her progress since she was given her new heart and lungs. Although she is the third patient to have the double transplant operation at Harefield, she's the first to survive. And finally, astronomers in America have discovered a new solar system, 293 trillion miles away from Earth. The solar system surrounds the star Beta Pictoris, which people living in the southern half of the world can see without using special equipment. These photographs, which have been processed by computers, were taken by astronomers using a huge telescope. They show a mass of solid particles around the star, and the brightness at the center suggests the solar dust has already formed into planets. NASA is calling the find the next generation of worlds.
Solar system can be defined in broad terms. A solar system is a system of material around a star. This certainly qualifies as that. Whether it has planets or not really depends on its age. It takes about 100 million years to form planets. This system, if it's on the order of 100 million years or older, then almost certainly it has planets around it. If it's younger than that, then almost certainly planets are forming right at this moment around it.
Just think for Captain Kirk will be here in a moment. I'll be back again tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.
Programmes tomorrow on BBC One at 4:15. Michael Palin tells his own story.
The trouble with Big Al is that he told really enormous lies. Most of them Small Harry didn't bother about, but sometimes they made him angry. A typical conversation would go like this. Big Alf, I know a way to send a message to Mars and back, using only 3 bits of string and an empty biscuit packet. Small Harry, no you don't. Big Alf, I do. Small Harry, you don't. Big Alf, I do. And so on.
And at 4:30, it's Screen Test with Mark Curry.
Hello, this is the first film in this week's Screen Test. I'll be asking questions about it to 2 teams from Dyfed and Cumbria. See if you can beat their score.
2 programmes for tomorrow afternoon on BBC One.
Space, the final frontier.
Number show. Johnny Ball looks at astronomy.
This is a pattern of stars that everybody can identify, or just about everybody. It's called the plough, and you can recognize it by its distinctive shape. And we all think that all these stars are the same distance away from Earth, but nothing could be further from the truth. This one is 55 light years away. This one, 200 light years away. And from anywhere else in space, you just wouldn't see the same pattern at all. It's only from Earth that we can identify this pattern of the plough.
2 programmes for tomorrow afternoon on BBC One. So now, if you're ready, we'll beam up to the Enterprise for another Star Trek.
Space.
Do you remember your first day at school? Was it hell? We went down to a couple of schools this term to see if it still is, for the children and for the parents. And suppose your grandparents are getting a little too frail to live on their own. Should they move in with you, or perhaps go into an old people's home? We've met some families who found answers that you might like to know about. And finally, what makes the perfect teenage party? Find out if that's true in that family life.
The 6 o'clock news follows a look at the weather now with Mike Fish.
Good evening to you. Well, here we go again, as you might say. I warned yesterday evening that we were only going to have a brief respite, and indeed there's another area of low pressure deepening like mad, and that's going to rush across the country during the course of the next 24 hours, bringing a return of wet and windy weather to most parts of the country, and in turn on Thursday that will be followed by brighter, showery weather. So let's look at tonight first of all, and at the moment at least it's a fairly dry start to the night. In fact, there's just 1 or 2 showers around in northern parts. They'll probably stay there actually throughout the night. For many central and eastern areas it will be a fine night, but later on in the night in Northern Ireland, Wales and many southern and western parts of England the cloud will thicken, bringing with it some outbreaks of rain, and some of the rain I think turning out to be quite heavy, the wind freshening up yet again as well. And tomorrow those areas starting off dull and wet and pretty windy too, come to that, but very gradually during the course of the day the rain will ease off somewhat, give way to drier and maybe a little bit brighter weather, but it's not going to be dry by any means. There'll be a fair number of pretty hefty showers around. In the more northern parts the day starting off dry, just here and there quite bright as well, but during the course of the day the rain will work its way up from the south, and again some of that rain could well turn out to be pretty heavy. The area I think most likely to escape the worst of the rain is the northern part of Scotland, where it'll stay bright with just a few showers. That's all. A very good evening to you.
On BBC Two in a few moments, James Garner once more opens the Rockford Files. This is BBC One.
The 6 o'clock news from the BBC with Sue Lawley and Nicholas Witchell.
Good evening. The headlines at 6 o'clock on the day when the scale of famine and death in Africa's worst drought became clear for the first time. We have a special report from Ethiopia, where hundreds of thousands of people are starving to death, where young and old are without food or hope, where every dawn villagers bury their dead, in a disaster the rest of the world is doing little to prevent.
And